around the country that don't even have connections to Oklahoma State or Kentucky or Arkansas or Creighton or any other place East Coast or really for that our family for that matter.
Hey, Sean, we covered a lot of stuff yesterday on your drive out to Lubbock, and we appreciate your time there. The one thing I wish, because we have different audiences, I wish you would revisit a little bit because it was a powerful part of our discussion yesterday. Go back to the Friday night conversation that you and your dad had, and you were convinced at that point that he understood what was going on.
Well, I mean, everybody wanted to know his reaction, and I talked about, I didn't get down there because they called so earlier, and I'd been working on some stuff and had a couple other interviews, and so I didn't get to see it, but I know what my brother saw, and I really think at that point, he was probably taking it all in, like what it meant to him, and so that night I just wanted to make sure that he understood. So it's just me and him in his living room, and I sat down with him. I said, "Dad, you understand what happened today, right? You understand that you're going into the Hall of Fame?" He said, "Yes." And so we talked about what that meant, and I came back, maybe a minute later, I said, "Dad, you got the call today. You're going in the Hall of Fame. You're going in. You made it. You understand what that means?" And he immediately said yes. So there's no question that he probably has some days that are better, but for the most part, I really think that he understands 90% of the questions when people ask him and what he hears. It's just unfortunately he can't process information back. And the other night I sat there with him when he was going to bed, and he tried to talk to me several times. It's just hard. I said, Dad, I can't understand what you're saying, and I wish I could, but it's just such the thing that we talked about yesterday, Tom, too. It's like how great a speaker he is, and how much how great a job he would do in his induction speech in Springfield, and just a shame that his players and his coaches and all the places he's coached, the fan bases, the schools he was at, especially Oklahoma State and Arkansas, people in both those states and both those schools, followers and students, and everybody that came to the games, very special to him. And then just, basketball people in general, because of his, the way that so many guys that have the knowledge, seen the players, seen the coaches from, maybe the all-time greats of the game. There's very few people that he doesn't know or didn't coach against that have impacted college basketball and the game of basketball. So just I wish it would have happened earlier, but we're excited that he finally got in.
I thought made him such a great coach, and this is one of many, but I got a chance to see it every day. And I want your reaction because you coached for him. If there's anything that resonates with me is this, that do not practice bad habits. If I heard that once, I heard it 5 million times. But what was it like when you were coaching? And I know what it was like, but I want you to tell our listeners. He would stop practice, I don't know how many times, an afternoon. If 4 guys were doing it right and one wasn't doing it, he'd get up there and stop practice. What was that like as a coach?
Well, it was frustrating at times, but I do exactly what I get done. He stopped a lot of plays on the first pass, and just because that's who he was. He's a perfectionist, and he wanted all 5 guys to do exactly what they're supposed to do, whether we were playing offense or defense. That's what made him great, and he wasn't going to allow slippage. He wasn't going to allow, just guys kind of going through the motion. He wanted everybody locked in, doing their jobs. His attention to detail probably as good as anybody's ever coached the game, and always made great adjustments in the game, and a really outstanding bench coach. But the thing that I think separated him is the energy every day that he brought to practice. Like, there was never a practice, so he didn't go out. I ever left the practice court where I felt like he was just 90% there. I mean, he's 100% every day, and it's hard to do because you know how long he practiced. Before they put the 20-hour rule in, a lot of days we practiced 3.5 hours. I mean, some days 4 if he wasn't very happy about it, and then if he didn't like it at that point, he'd send us home and then come back. But I was just always amazed at his discipline and just how he just brought it every day, and he gave his players his very best. And I think he felt like I'm going to go ask these guys to give me their best every day. They're going to get my best. And he never let them down in that regard. Coached them hard, but like, you've been there, Tom, thousands practice. Like, he'd be all over Tony Allen, all practice long. And as soon as practice ended, he'd walk up to him. And Tony said, this is with all his players, but he'd go over there and he'd put his arm around him and say, I love you. You understand what I'm trying to do here. I care about you. Part of my responsibility is to make you the best player I can make you. And if I let you get away with some things and don't correct some things, don't coach you, I'm letting you down. And I'm not going to do that. So I think those players always understood how much he cared about them, how much he loved them. And that's why, they embraced his coaching, even when it was tough. Probably, some of the things he said to them weren't very easy to hear, but they never took it personally. They took it as coach just trying to make me better.
One of the things that I recall, and I know you're going to smile when I say this, it was funny. It wasn't funny for me because I'd be sitting there with him, as you well know, and we just for a few minutes we might be talking about a movie or we might be talking about baseball, which we didn't see eye to eye with the same team. And he might, let's just use Mason as an example, and he'd jump up and get on Mason about something, and he'd say, even Dirato thinks you're jogging around, not play. And I had nothing to say about it. Mason would look at me like, who are you critiquing what I'm doing? But he would do that with people on the bench, but he got his point across.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that's probably being too kind to you. You see a lot of guys out to the ocean with the sharks, throwing people out there. And he agrees with me. He said, you're not playing hard today, or whatever he talks about. But that is funny. Like I think the guys that have worked with him, that have gone on and coached other places, and the one thing they always say is that they just can't believe his eye for the game. That just the things he sees that most people can't. And guy didn't set an angle on that screen correctly. That guy didn't help there, whatever it might be. I've heard that so many times over the years that just his eye for just perfectionism on the practice court every day is one of the reasons that separated him and allowed him to be such an outstanding coach.
Coach, this whole process, it's been a long one to ultimately end up seeing Coach Sutton into the Naismith Hall of Fame. But the thing that sticks out for me, I hate that it took this long, but over these years to see the support that you've gotten, and like I said, not just from the Oklahoma State community, but college basketball in general. I don't know if there's ever been a campaign to get somebody in the Hall of Fame quite like there has been for Coach Sutton. And I don't know if you guys, it would have been nice to get there the first time, but when you look back, that process has to make you guys feel really warm.
Looking back on it, yeah, it does. It means a lot because a lot of people spent a lot of time and went out of their way to promote him, and just because they felt so strongly about he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. And it's been going on a long time. I mentioned this yesterday. Fran Fraschillo, 2005 broadcast of the Big 12 tournament, turned the broadcast of that championship game in Kansas City. Right in the middle of it, he said, why is A. Sutton not in the Hall of Fame? A. Sutton needs to be in the Hall of Fame. You got to get him in there. And he kind of challenged the committee like it's time. And that's going back to 2005, and really the next 15 years, we heard that same theme and that same message from so many people in college basketball, whether it be great coaches or former players or the outstanding media that covers college basketball, just people in general that have a little bit of influence and carry weight. They've always thrown out that they feel like that's important and they feel strongly about it. And certainly our family appreciates all the support my dad got and all the people that helped make this happen.
Your mom was such a major part of this, and if you look back in the bittersweet part, some of the bitter part for me is that he's such a great storyteller. He won't be able to do that when he's inducted, and your mom won't be standing next to him. That to me is the biggest part of this waiting. But I got to throw this in. It's kind of funny. I was laughing with Scott. Your dad had he had a great storyteller, but he had the ability to embellish stories on occasion. And I learned early on, because your mom was usually there, I'd look at your mom, and when she started rolling her eyes, then I knew that we were going into an embellished state of a story. But your dad was such a great storyteller, it was hard to tell what was real and what wasn't.
Well, I mean, first of all, like you bring up my mom, I mean, my dad never even comes close to making the Hall of Fame without my mom by his side every time. He said that many, many times, that she was the most important person in his life, for his as a person and him for a coach. And the success that he had was her success. And he said it, and you've heard him say it a lot of times, Tom. He was his really number one assistant, number one supporter. And so it's just I wish she could be here for it, because she did. She played such a major role, and she was never out there. A lot of people don't understand the things she did behind the scenes, her relationships with the players, and her ability to bounce players back when they would get in my dad's doghouse. And she was a motherly figure to our players, and they all understood how much she cared about them. So I wish she was here. I mean, she's obviously a huge, huge part of it. I know she would be proud. And it's been hard on my dad not having her around. And but anyway, she just she start telling those stories, and he's one of the. That's why I think people enjoy being around him. And he's got a lot of great stories because he's lived a long, long time. But he's also seen a lot of things in his life that have been interesting, and been around some real characters through the years, different places he's coached. But he's one of the best all-time storytellers. But there were times where he made it probably a little bit more than it was, and she always was there to call him out a little bit.
Eddie, and she just that, and then he'd get back off a little bit. I got to ask you this. Hopefully, this is going to be coming out for everybody to see sooner than later, and that seems to be the secondary topic of conversation. All right, now that Coach is in, when are we going to see this this documentary that is done? And obviously, you've seen it as a family. I got a chance to see it. What was your reaction when you watched that story? Because I thought it was fair and didn't pull any punches.
Well, I thought, it's an amazing story of, a brilliant man that has great compassion for people, was a loving father, a devoted husband, a second father to his players. You think about all the lives that he touched and influenced, and our society is so much better because of the influence of all that he had on so many people and his random acts of kindness. So you certainly see, that side, that successful coach that was a strong character for his players and had a lot of integrity in terms of kind of the way he lived his life in certain areas, and just his overall love and grace and for the people that were around him. But then you see the other human element of a man that was flawed and had a lot of some personal issues and personal demons he had to overcome with alcoholism. And then you see the redemption of the whole story. So I thought it was really a really good film that I think people will connect to, whether you are a sports fan, whether you've ever even watched him coach the game, because it tells the tale of a guy that has been on top of the mountain and he's been at the bottom. And when he's been at the bottom, he's been able to regroup, pick himself up, and climb back up that hill, and only get knocked down again, and then do it again. And so it shows the major things that have gone on that have been negative in my dad's life, and we felt like to order to tell his story, you got to tell the whole story. And there's scenes in there that not very easy to watch. And for me personally, there were some scenes that were tough to talk about because my dad and I always had a unbelievable relationship in terms of when I played for him, when I worked with him, never had really any issues. And one of the things I think that made that work, and you know this, Tom, because you were around when I played for him, he didn't treat me any different than any of my teammates, and that's the only way it was ever going to work. And so I was held probably to a higher standard than any those guys were. He was probably tougher on me, but like that's something we had talked about, and I knew like that's what it had to be. And because of that, I think I always had great respect and great relationships with my teammates. Obviously, we had a lot of success when I worked for him. That there was a lot of things that happened when I grew up behind the scenes that happened at home when he was drinking that weren't easy to go through. And so, you know, at times, you know, some of those things were hard to talk about, but I felt it was important kind of to tell the whole story. And I think because of that, it makes for a lot better movie.
Can't wait for all of us to get a chance to see that as a community, and it's going to be great, and we know that. And I know one thing they're going to talk about in that documentary is the coaching tree and how many different people have come from that. And I want to talk about something because I think sometimes we talk about Coach Sutton and we see the basketball side, and we've talked a lot, and we are showing the personal side, how much impact. But I cover a lot of high school sports, Sean. I know that as a college coach, there's always the intersection because of recruiting with high school sports. But I don't know if people understand the impact that your dad had on the high school sports scene with how many high school coaches are out there right now that were a part of the staff as a manager. I mean, I could go through a whole list of them, as well as the basketball camps. He was kind of one of the pioneers of being able to get youth league kids into basketball camps to learn on skills. And sometimes I feel like that may be lost in the conversation a little bit, the impact that he had on high school and maybe youth league sports.
Well, I mean, I think it's a great point that's not talked about that much because he let high school coaches, junior high coaches, junior college coaches, really anybody that ever wanted to come in and watch him practice. He always had an open door. They always had an open invitation to come and visit anytime they wanted to. And he would spend a lot of time with people that would come and see him, or after he would speak at a clinic, he always took time to talk to those guys. And you can't, I'm sure you can. I mean, there's just so many calls every year throughout the year from high school coaches and people that coach at different levels, wanting to talk about his philosophy and how's he handled this, and can you tell me about this, and can you send me some information on this? And so, you know, he influenced way more people than we even know about. You know, everybody thinks about his players and his coaches and the managers and everybody else kind of in his inner circle, his basketball family. But there's also so many people on the outside that wanted his knowledge, and he was so giving of his time because he felt like that was so important to him. And one of the reasons he felt that way is because some of the guys that helped him when he was growing up, that spent time with him, and you know, three guys that really came to mind to me when he was trying to advance his career that made, I think, a pretty big impact on him with Al McGuire and Coach Knight and Dean Smith. You know, all three of those guys were kind of mentors to him when he was a young coach. So he's never forgotten how important it is to help the next generation of coaches. The other thing I would mention, you talk about some of his things that he's had to overcome, and some were self-inflicted and some, you know, weren't his fault. But I do know one of the things he could talk about, if he was able to speak at the Hall of Fame, you know, he would obviously, you know, talk about my mother and the influence that she had on his career. He would talk about what Mr. Iba meant to him, and that basically he followed his same teachings and a lot of his foundation and what he taught back in the 40s and 50s and 60s still applies today all over the country in terms of his beliefs in certain things. But the other thing I do know, and I feel strongly about, that he would talk about what the 10 people that playing class meant to him, and how hard that was for him. And he still, to this day, thinks about those guys all the time. So, you know, it's a part that we didn't really talk about yesterday. It is discussed, you know, pretty significantly in the movie. And I think it really impacted his life. It was such a difficult experience for him making those calls. I don't think he's ever had to do anything ever remotely close to the night he called those 10 families, and that he changed as a person when that happened, in terms of like, and he said this, like, there was never a day after that. There's never a day after that he didn't call me and my 2 brothers, tell my mom, tell the people around him every day how much he loved them and cared about them, because he didn't want them to ever know how he felt. And he always talked to our team about, you appreciate every day, you make the most of every day when you're here. We never know. And I think, the results of that plane crash had an effect on him that led to some of the issues that basically forced him to resign at Oklahoma State. And whether it was the guilt of that plane going down, and ultimately, he was the one that assigned the people that were on that plane. It was hard on him, and he struggled with it. And people didn't see that because he's such a strong person. And I really was truly. I don't have the right word to even describe it, but just amazed at his strength through that whole time, and his ability to be there for everybody, but be there for our team. And with all that going on, and probably his most inexperienced team got them to the NCAA tournament and willed them into there, because he felt like it was that important to honor those guys. That's all at that point. That's all we could really do, is play as hard as we could do. But it had probably more effect on it than anything in his life. And so I know those people are really special to him, and he would have talked about them for sure.
Well, we appreciate your time as always, and I'm not happy because you don't want to be happy over the situation, but I'm glad you brought that part up, because there's some things that stick out in your mind, whether you're a coach or whatever, and I remember that night for obvious reasons, but we went back to his office, and because we were not in the office, we were in another building, and I said, do you want me to help you with these phone calls? And he looked me in the eye and said, I've got to make these phone calls. And Sean, I can't imagine how difficult that was every time you dialed the family up to tell them.
Oh, and it's just something you never get out of your head when you hear the cries and the screams coming over the phone. And he just felt so badly about it. And it was tough. It was the hardest night I've ever been through, I can tell you that. And I remember the phone call I got at my house, and exactly what he told me, and that conversation is talked about and related verbatim in the movie. And just a sad night for Oklahoma State basketball and college basketball and really the country. And he did an unbelievable job kind of getting everybody through that transition with his strength and just his strong character as a man. And I think, like people on the outside, that a lot of just people in general couldn't believe the way he was able to handle that whole situation, because it wasn't easy for him. There's just nothing in the playbook to ever get somebody ready for or prepared for something like that. So I know he gained a lot of respect in a very tragic situation by the way that he was able to kind of lead, our basketball team, but also Oklahoma State University, the state of Oklahoma, and kind of even college basketball in general through that very difficult period.
Sean, we always appreciate your time, bud. I know you'll be talking a lot here, and it's happy talk because you and your family are so proud of your dad being inducted. So we'll let you go here, but we'll touch base here a little further down the line. And you got the good thing going out of Tech, so you can get back into action there as well. But we always appreciate your thoughts and your time again on 2 separate days. Yeah. And we'll stay in touch.
I just want you to know, like, I think you know this, but like my dad, loved you, and like you guys had a great relationship, and you did a lot for his career, and even though you didn't make any baskets, you helped him a lot, and you certainly played an important role in helping him get to the Hall of Fame. So from our family, we want to say thank you.
Very gracious. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Sean,
right,
thanks. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.